You never forget the moment someone else's truth collides with your own, especially when it shatters everything you thought you knew. That night, a billionaire named Gerald Carter walked into a 5-star restaurant just like he always did, entitled, impatient and untouchable, but a single sentence from a young black waiter turned his world upside down in a way that money couldn't fix. It all started with 6 simple words: "My mom has the same ring." And suddenly, the past clawed its way into the present with a vengeance. Gerald Carter was the kind of man people admired, envied, or feared. CEO of a tech empire worth over $20 billion, he had the swagger of someone who believed the world owed him everything. With silver-streaked hair, sharp suits, and the coldest blue eyes imaginable, Gerald didn't just walk into rooms. He owned them. That night, he was seated in the private section of one of New York's elite rooftop restaurants. His assistant had made the usual arrangements. Only the most trusted staff. No interruptions, and silence unless spoken to. Then came Elijah, a polite, soft-spoken 23-year-old waiter with kind eyes and a warm smile. Elijah had taken the job after dropping out of Columbia to take care of his mother, who had recently been diagnosed with an aggressive form of lupus. He wasn't just a waiter. He was a son, a caregiver, a dreamer holding life together with duct tape and prayer. Elijah approached Gerald's table with practiced calm, laying down the vintage menu and describing the specials. But something caught his eye. A ring. Not just any ring. A unique, antique sapphire ring with an emerald vine twist around its band. Elijah had only ever seen it once before, and it wasn't in a catalog or on television. It had been on his mother's finger his entire life. He froze, stared. Then, before he could catch himself, the words slipped out. "My mom has the same ring." Gerald's hand jerked back like it had been burned. His face drained of color. For a man who rarely reacted to anything, it was as if Elijah had just whispered a ghost into existence. He didn't speak, didn't blink. He just stared at Elijah with wide, panicked eyes as if trying to read his soul. The tension cracked the air. Elijah immediately stepped back. "I'm sorry, sir," he said, flustered. "It just looked familiar. I didn't mean any. Where did your mother get that ring?" Gerald's voice cut through him like a blade. Sharp, low, trembling. I don't know." Elijah stammered. "She's always had it. Said it was a gift a long time ago." Gerald stood up abruptly, knocking over his glass of wine. "What's your mother's name?" Elijah hesitated. He felt exposed, confused, even a little frightened. "Vanessa. Vanessa Brooks." And that's when Gerald's hands started shaking. He slowly lowered himself back into the chair. His breathing was heavy, erratic. The waiter watched him unravel, unsure whether to call someone or just walk away. But Gerald spoke again. This time, softer. "Tell her Gerald Carter is here, and I need to see her. Tonight." Elijah blinked. "Wait, you know my mom?" The billionaire looked like he'd seen a ghost. "She saved me once. Then I destroyed her life." The walk home that night felt like a surreal dream. Elijah couldn't stop replaying the moment. Gerald Carter, billionaire titan, trembling like a child at the mention of his mother's name. What did he mean by, "I destroyed her life"? When he got home to their modest Brooklyn apartment, he found Vanessa watching reruns of a 90s sitcom, her blanket up to her chin. She smiled weakly when she saw him. "You're home early." "Mom," Elijah said gently, "do you remember a man named Gerald Carter?" Her smile faltered. Her fingers gripped the blanket tighter. For a long moment, she didn't speak. Then she looked away. I was hoping I'd never hear that name again. Elijah sat beside her. He saw your ring. He said you saved him. And that he ruined your life. Vanessa let out a long, shaky breath. That ring, I never wanted you to know the story behind it. But I guess it's time. And so, she told him. Back in the late 1990s, Vanessa had been a live-in housekeeper for the Carters, a wealthy family who lived in Connecticut. She was only 19, fresh out of high school, trying to save money for nursing school. Gerald was 21 then, a reckless, charming, and wild rich boy home from Harvard for the summer. While his parents were cold and distant, Gerald was different. He was kind, curious about her, always asking questions, always looking for something beyond his gilded cage. And one rainy night, after a power outage left the estate in darkness, they shared a kiss in the kitchen. Then everything changed. Secret meetings. Whispered dreams. Gerald promised he'd take her away from all of it. That they'd run off and start a life of their own. For once, Vanessa believed someone meant it, but the Carter family found out. And they acted swiftly, cruelly. She was fired on the spot. Humiliated. Her name blacklisted across the East Coast's elite service circles. Gerald didn't fight for her. He vanished. The ring. It had arrived by courier 2 weeks later, in a velvet box with no note. I thought I was pregnant, Vanessa whispered, but the test was negative, so I let it go. I moved on, or at least I tried to. Elijah sat frozen. Everything he thought he knew about his mother's past had just cracked open. Why didn't you ever tell me? Because I wanted to protect you from the pain of knowing someone can look you in the eye and still abandon you. And then she said something that made his blood run cold. Elijah, he didn't destroy me. Not really. But I saw something in him that night, and I knew, if he ever became powerful, someone else might pay the price. The doorbell rang. Elijah and Vanessa exchanged a glance. Standing at the door was Gerald Carter, and he was crying. Gerald stood at the doorway, drenched from the rain that had started minutes before. No umbrella, no coat. Just a billionaire stripped of his armor, holding nothing but decades of regret. Vanessa didn't move. For a moment, the only sound was the ticking of the wall clock and the steady beat of rain on the pavement. Elijah hovered near the kitchen, unsure if he should intervene. But his mother, strong, calm, and composed, finally stepped forward. "Come in," she said, her voice cool but not unkind. Gerald entered like a man walking through memories. His eyes scanned the small, warm apartment. Family photos, Elijah's school awards, a modest bouquet on the table. Nothing like the sterile luxury he was used to. "I didn't know," he said quietly, eyes locked on Vanessa. "Gerald," she replied. "You didn't want to know." He nodded, shame evident in every line of his face. "You have every right to hate me." Vanessa sat down, motioning for him to do the same. Elijah remained standing, arms crossed, protective. "I don't hate you," she said, looking him dead in the eye. "I just stopped waiting for you to be the man you promised me you'd become." Gerald winced. "They forced me to let you go." "My parents—" "No," she interrupted. "Don't you dare blame them. You were a grown man. You made a choice. And I lived with the consequences." Gerald lowered his head. "That ring I sent you. It was a mistake, not the gift. I meant that. But sending it without a word, I was a coward." Silence again. Elijah spoke. Why are you here, Mr. Carter? After all these years. Gerald looked at him with tearful eyes. Because I've spent my entire life building empires, acquiring power, and buying silence, but nothing has haunted me more than what I did to your mother. I came to make it right. Vanessa raised an eyebrow. You think you can buy redemption? No, Gerald said quickly. But I can try to earn it. Starting with the truth. He reached into his pocket and pulled out an old, faded photo. It was folded, creased, clearly kept for years. He handed it to Elijah. The photo showed a young Gerald and Vanessa, arms around each other, laughing under a tree. You saved me, Vanessa, Gerald said. Not just from my family, but from myself. After you left, I spiraled, dropped out of Harvard. Drugs, alcohol. I nearly OD'd twice. Nothing made sense without you. Vanessa swallowed hard, but didn't speak. Gerald continued. It wasn't until I hit rock bottom that I got clean. I started a company with nothing. Built it from scratch. Every boardroom I walked into, I heard your voice in my head telling me to do the right thing. And I ignored it, again and again, until tonight. He turned to Elijah. I saw your eyes, and I saw her, and I realized I've been trying to forget the best part of my life because it hurt too much to remember how I threw it away. Elijah stared at him. So what now? You confess and expect forgiveness. No, Gerald said, voice shaking. I want to give back what I stole. Not just an apology. A legacy. He pulled out a small folder. Inside was a legal document. I'm setting up a fund in your name, Vanessa, to cover your medical bills and more. But that's not all. Elijah, I want to offer you a full scholarship to any school you want. And a mentorship, if you'll have it. I know I can't undo the past, but maybe, just maybe, I can be part of the future. The room fell quiet again. Vanessa looked at her son, then back at the man she once loved. There was pain, but there was also healing. Gerald, she said softly, you'll never know the nights I cried wondering what I did wrong. But seeing you here like this, I see now it wasn't about me. It was about you. And maybe it's not too late for you to do one right thing. Gerald whispered, can I come back? Can I visit sometimes? Vanessa stood slowly, walked toward him, and to everyone's surprise, she gently placed her hand on his shoulder. Start by showing up, she said. Then we'll see. The days that followed were strange, quiet but heavy with unspoken things. Gerald Carter, the billionaire who could barely speak Vanessa's name without trembling, began showing up, not with gifts, but with presence. He visited Vanessa every evening after work, sometimes with soup, sometimes with nothing but an apology in his eyes. He didn't talk much those first few days. He just listened to Vanessa hum old jazz songs in the kitchen, listened to Elijah talk about his dreams of going back to school, listened to the woman he left behind remind him, without saying a word, what it meant to be decent. And over time, something unthinkable began to bloom. Peace. Gerald was different now. Not just in how he moved, but in how he looked at things. He used to scan the world for opportunity. Now, he looked for connection. One evening, he arrived with a box tucked under his arm. Elijah opened the door and gave him the usual cautious nod. Hey, Gerald said with a small smile, is it okay if I show you both something? Vanessa emerged from the kitchen, towel in hand. Depends on what it is. He opened the box. Inside was a polished wooden frame, and in that frame, 2 rings. One was the sapphire ring he'd once sent her. The other was a duplicate, identical in every detail. But this one held an inscription on the inside. Forgiveness begins with truth. I had it made, Gerald said. One for you, one for me. So we never forget what was lost and what's still possible. Vanessa looked at the ring and didn't speak. Instead, she reached out and gently closed the box. It's not about rings anymore, Gerald. It's about time and what you do with it. He nodded slowly. Then let me use the rest of mine right. A week later, Gerald invited Elijah to his office. The towering glass skyscraper felt surreal to the young man. He didn't belong there, and yet, somehow, he did. Gerald walked him through the company's development wing, showed him cutting-edge prototypes, and even introduced him to a few key executives. At the end of the tour, he turned to Elijah with an unexpected proposal. How would you like to build something here? A program to support underprivileged youth. You'll have my full backing. You design it. I'll fund it. Elijah blinked. Why me? Because you remind me of the man I should have been. And because if we're going to build a better world, it needs to start with people who've lived through its worst parts. For the first time since that fateful dinner, Elijah smiled fully. I'm in. And just like that, a legacy was reborn, not built on guilt, but on purpose. Months passed. Vanessa's health stabilized thanks to top-tier treatments covered by the fund Gerald had created. She started teaching part-time at a local community center, helping single mothers find their footing. She glowed more than she had in years. Elijah was accepted into NYU's social entrepreneurship program. But he didn't stop working. He built that outreach program from scratch, connecting mentors, funding tech courses, and launching scholarships. The program was called the Sapphire Project, in quiet honor of the ring that started it all. As for Gerald, he didn't try to buy their forgiveness anymore. He earned it, day by day. Sometimes redemption doesn't arrive with fireworks. Sometimes it's in the quiet moments, a shared meal, a second chance, a slow rebuilding of trust. And sometimes, just sometimes, life gives us one more shot at doing the right thing, if we're brave enough to take it. On the anniversary of the night they reunited, the three of them stood in Vanessa's small kitchen. Laughing, eating, living. Three people who should have never crossed paths again, yet somehow did. Because of a ring, because of a sentence, because of 6 words that brought the past home. My mom has the same ring. Sometimes the truth breaks us, but sometimes it sets us free. If this story touched your heart, don't forget to like, comment, and hit that subscribe button. There's more truth where that came from. Only on Live Truths.